College is now unbound from its tired collectivist overlords, so we can keep learning the truth about collectivism versus capitalism. Welcome back, scholars. I'm Gardner Goldsmith. You know, in part one of our MRC interactive learning series, we shed light on the fact that Karl Marx filled vast tracts of his personal landscape with envy, contempt, and hypocrisy. But how did those troubling personal qualities become the core of his world-damaging communist ideology? And how have they attracted generations of predatory collectivists? To understand the core of Marxism and all collectivism, it's time we look at Marx's use of envy. So, following in the footsteps of French socialist Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Marx, in his Communist Manifesto, attempted to win over and agitate revolutionary masses by appealing to the sense of inequality, that feeling of righteous indignation upon thinking that someone else has more at one's perceived expense. And to cap it off, Marx grounded that emotional lever in a popular and erroneous economic concept of the time called the labor theory of value, creating a marriage that's lasted for nearly 2 centuries. It's important to understand this labor theory of value. This is the false idea that the worth of something is determined by the labor behind making the thing, including all of the labor that went into making the tools to make the thing. Now, this allowed a propagandist like Marx to appeal to the so-called worker, to claim that only those depicted as physical laborers were infusing something with value. Thus, by adding up all of the effort that he called work, voila! Marx claimed to divine the worth of a product, a worth always allied with the so-called proletariat or worker. But in the late 19th century, Austrian economist Karl Menger shattered that myth by doing something that we can all do today. He simply asked some simple questions. So, for example, if an artist works for 10 hours on a sculpture that he attempts to sell for, say, $100, but no consumer wants to buy it, how much is it worth? The answer clearly is that it's not worth $100, no matter what the laborer claims. In fact, as it stands, the unsold piece is actually worth $0. It's possible that the artist could sell for less, but thus far, no one has shown that he or she is willing to pay that amount. And Menger was spot on. The principle to remember is that value is determined by the consumer, not by the amount of work that went into something. The consumer must agree to buy. The consumer determines the price, and all human valuation is subjective and based on free will, which turns Marx's envy concept on its head. Indeed, despite his envy-based claims about labor and his attempt to inspire feelings of contempt in the hearts of manual laborers, it's not the supposedly evil business owner who runs the economy. It's the consumer who can trade or hold his money at any time. The owner of the means of production is at the mercy of the consumer. The market caters to consumers, and we're all traders, peacefully offering something that we have for something that we value more.
When Marx assigns value to labor, he displays a grave misunderstanding of the source of value. Value is not something created by any aspect of the production process, not labor, not capital goods, not land. Rather, value comes from the need satisfaction by the potential user of the good. The higher valued use the good satisfies in the mind of the consumer, the higher its value. Indeed, value comes from the connection to human wants and satisfactions, not from the production process.
In fact, the supposedly mendacious capitalist employer offers a place to work, tools, and other resources that his accumulated capital can acquire, and that the young worker might not be able to get because he or she has not yet had an opportunity to save. The worker offers physical or other forms of resources to the employer so that the employer can utilize his or her own skills most efficiently. In fact, the employer typically starts paying the employee before the company itself has even turned a profit. And the person seen as the typical consumer actually is the final employer of both the business owner and his or her staff. But since Marx's foundation was envy, he avoided all those facts about value, all the facts about the blessings of the Industrial Revolution, capital surplus, and voluntary trade in order to portray the worker as exploited and in the end, attack private property and free will. Marx avoided the fact that the growth of trade in the Industrial Revolution was bringing greater prosperity for millions. He avoided the reality that in the mid-1800s, the Industrial Revolution had all but wiped out the feudal royal peerage system, and he avoided the fact that the per capita death rate was plummeting, that wealth and property were no longer functions of corrupt monarchical preference and connections, and that prosperity was becoming a function of good ideas, hard work, and pleasing customers. Indeed, as Rousseau had done, Marx vindictively called the new business people the bourgeoisie, which we need to remember is actually derived from the feudal German burgher or royally appointed governor of a town.
Those rebels will not have one moment's peace until they are captured again.
Imagine, in criticizing peaceful market capitalism, Marx erroneously and unfairly redefined a term that had applied to the politically privileged royal peers of feudalism. He made it apply to the people who had created their wealth by catering to consumers in a free market. In fact, Marx actually made the term bourgeoisie apply to the very liberating force that had brought down the bourgeoisie. And in so doing, Marx preyed on envy, giving rise to mass feelings of contempt and a toxic revolutionary culture that thrives today in America. Indeed, it's the same terrible envy and contempt that sees Marxists in Black Lives Matter and Antifa transmute possibly valid arguments about police brutality into class warfare, rioting, and calls for more redistribution of wealth. And it's the same baseless contempt that blinds Marxists from seeing their own hypocrisy. Imagine, Marxists believe that by punishing productivity and prosperity, by literally stealing property, they can increase prosperity. They claim that they can promote human liberation through the extirpation of individual will. They promote the mass or the group. But any group of people is by definition composed of and always reducible to individuals who never lose their free will just by being around other people or by being categorized with some term or label. It's all a lie. It's a falsehood promoting envy and contempt in order to overlook its own self-defeating hypocrisy and economic faults. It negates the individual while claiming to protect the individual. To put the individual at the mercy of the mob while shouting about the minority and the underclass, that's just obscene. But it's precisely what Marxism has done for almost 200 years. Hey everyone, thanks so much for enjoying this lesson. Let's lock in the knowledge about Marx's envy and the labor theory of value by quizzing ourselves and telling others what we now know. Let's talk to them about each installment, and next time we'll quickly and efficiently expose the key moral, logical, and economic errors of Marx and collectivism that have always failed in practice, and then we'll be ready to break down the 10 planks of Marx's Communist Manifesto to understand our enemy at the gates and see just how many of those planks already have been implemented in the supposed land of the free. Take the quiz, everybody, tell your friends, and learn how to fight for freedom. Let's not lose this opportunity to gain wisdom. I hope you like what we're creating. This new endeavor is designed for you, and I hope you'll link through to the official site and sign on. You'll get special access to all the new videos, you'll get the fun quizzes you can take anytime, and you'll get special ideas to share with friends at this crucial time to gain in wisdom. It's all free. I hope you'll get in there and enjoy it.